After Dark with Recliner Sports.
3, 2, 1, 0.
What is that? What's going on, gang? That's all she wrote. That's kind of it for the season. Not the way we would have wanted to see it finish, but also probably not the way we expected it to finish, right? Not the way we would have expected the Canadiens to go out. Just making the playoffs, I think, was a big surprise this year. But again, once they get there, once the Canadiens make it to the playoffs, you kind of your expectations adjust a little bit, and you certainly hope for the best. And unfortunately, it wasn't in the cards for this year. I think it would have been a significant. I've said this all along. It would have been a significant upset for the Canadiens to have pulled off a series victory over the Washington Capitals, and it just wasn't in the cards. But at the end of the day, I think the season was a very good one. There's a lot of progress. The rebuild is ahead of schedule, and it's it's very positive. It's very positive overall, and obviously it kind of stings a little bit tonight to know that the season's over. But when it comes down to everything, and when we can sit back and look at it objectively and see where the team has come from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, and from last year to this year, I think it's pretty positive. So with that in mind, guys, I'm going to do a little cheers to the Canadiens. We've got our little bit of Blanton's whiskey here, guys. I know I'm a rum guy, but this is a little bit of whiskey. We're going to do a cheers to the Canadiens and their season, and the end of another season. So yeah, again, we'll obviously talk more in days to come about how this season went and what to look forward to down the road, and where the team is going with their rebuild and how things are, certainly on the up and up. And but for tonight, we'll reminisce a little bit about the season. I'll certainly spend most of the time talking with you guys and responding to your comments, and not necessarily doing much talking. So hopefully you guys will drive the conversation here tonight. I see Tristan, Randy, Lucky is here, Kartik, Peter August. So let's get started, guys. Again, if you're not following us, if you're not subscribed yet, please do so. There's a subscribe button down below here somewhere. Hit the thumbs up button if you're enjoying the content. But yeah, Tristan, you sum it up just perfectly, right? Not disappointed, just sad. Yeah, again, like I said, when and if the Canadiens got eliminated, I think it was going to be a bad day and it was going to be a tough one. But once we, have the opportunity to look back at the entire season as a whole and appreciate what they've accomplished this year, I think, the bottom line is that this has been a pretty positive season, right? This has been a season that we can look back on fondly, and when we look back on the development of this team as it continues to move forward, I think this will be a season where we say, a lot was done to build towards what we're hopefully going to be able to see from this team in the future. Randy says they gave it their all. Yeah, they did. They did, right? And I think they gained some very valuable experience playing in the playoffs, playing important and meaningful games at the end of the season. These are things that they would have not expected. I mean, the players probably would have expected it or hoped for it. But I think these are all things that they'll take and put it in their back pocket and use it as they continue to move forward with the rebuild and with their respective careers. Didn't expect a championship, but wanted more. Yeah, maybe. But again, Washington's a pretty solid team, and when you go into the playoffs as the 8th seed in the conference, it's tough. It's tough, right? And you can't expect to beat a team like Washington. You can hope for it, and you can think that it's possible, but to expect it, I think, is a bit too much. So, good evening, Lucky. Same to you. I hope you are well, and it's good to see you as always. These 5 games were so crucial for the development of the young core. I'm excited what the future holds. Go Habs, go! 100%. Right? At the end of the day, if nothing else, the Canadiens came out of this with really good, valuable experience. Their young players now know what it's like to play in the playoffs. They know what it's like to play against the odds in the playoffs. They know what it's like to play in an elimination game in the playoffs. All of that stuff, right? They know what it's like to skate out onto the Bell Center ice with the playoff crowd. They know what it's like to skate on an opposing ice with a playoff crowd. So these are all things that they can take with them as they continue to move towards being a contender for the Stanley Cup. As the young players continue to develop and move on, a lot of positives. We saw a lot of positives, obviously, from Lane Hudson, from Caden Gooley, from Uri Slavkovsky, Caulfield, Suzuki, Demidov. Lots of positives there, and a lot of young players coming up. As well. Welcome, Peter. Howdy to you as well. It's great to see you. Thank you for coming. I appreciate you as always, and it's nice to see you here. Randy, hopefully we can tweak some changes to the lineup to be better to compete for next year. Yeah, I mean, I think there's two different ways of looking at it. One, there's development from within, and two, there's like what you're referring to, Randy, is tweaking the lineup a little bit. I think there may be some room for some tweaking, but there also I think a lot of the development will come from within, right? As Caulfield gets better, as Slavkovsky gets better, as Suzuki gets better, as Demidov gets better, as Hudson gets better, as Gooley gets better, the team will improve. So it's not so much about bringing people in from the outside to make the team better as it is about, continuing to improve from within. Claudio, get rid of Laine. Disagree. Hard disagree. Laine has another year on his contract. I suspect that he'll fulfill the rest of his contract. He'll get an opportunity to play next year. That's the ugliest hockey player I've ever seen in my life. Who's number 70 for the Buffaloes for the St. Louis Blues? Sundqvist. He's the ugliest. He might be the ugliest human being I've ever seen. Holy smokes! Did you guys see that? That might be the ugliest human being I've ever seen in my life. Sorry to interrupt, but that just came up on the screen and it frightened me. I don't even know his first. Sundqvist, number 70 for St. Louis. Go have a look at him. Holy cow. That's an ugly human being. So getting back to Laine. Yeah, I mean, Laine's got another year on his contract. He'll play next year. And at the end of next year, there will be a decision made about where things go from there. He'll either re-sign or he'll move on. And what he resigns for will be depending on, how he performs. I've got no problem with what Patrick Laine gave the Montreal Canadiens this year, right? Like, he's a guy who, was an unknown coming in. They traded him for less than nothing. They actually were given an asset, a draft pick, in return for drafting him. He got injured in the first game or the second game of the preseason, missed the first half of the season, and came back and scored 21, 22 goals. Turned around the Canadiens' power play when it was really struggling. Obviously, he had his bad moments and he had his tough moments, but for the most part, I don't have any real issue with what Patrick Laine offered this year. Refresh us for the Habs UFAs this coming season. Again, there's tons of UFAs out there. I don't know that the Canadiens are going to be super active in the UFA market. I think they'll probably be more likely looking at RFAs than UFAs. I don't think they're looking to make any big signings at this stage. So I'm not really that keen on the UFA market. Matheson struggled tonight, and I'm not a hater. He had Heineman, I believe it was wide open and deked himself out of the play. Yeah, Matheson didn't have his best game ever tonight. I don't disagree with that. But, for the most part, Matheson's been pretty solid for the Canadiens this year. They certainly wouldn't be in the playoffs if he weren't on the team, if it weren't for him. I don't have any issue with Matheson. I think he does probably need to start moving into a lesser role on the team. I don't think, it's ideal for him to be playing 26, 27, 28 minutes in a game. And I think that'll probably those numbers will decrease as, Caden Gooley improves and Lane Hudson obviously is already playing big minutes. But, if Reinbacher makes the team next year or if Mailloux makes the team next year, then, we could definitely see, some of those things change. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. And but, yeah, he did struggle tonight. But, for the most part, he's been a pretty solid contributor to the team so far this season. Peter, Devin, this is not the team they will have next year nor the year after. Given this lineup, they did well. Yeah, they're young, right? A lot of their failings this year came from their youth and the fact that they don't have the mental game that they ideally would have, right? It's not about it's not about their skill or a lack of talent. It's more about their ability to meet the occasion, to the winning habits that we've heard Marty St. Louis talk about all season long. It's about the their ability to deal with adversity, their ability to turn their momentum, again, another Marty St. Louis favorite, right? To turn the momentum in their favor, how to start games well, how to deal with, when the other team scores. Like tonight was a hard time, right? They came out, they played really, really well for the first, 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes. And then, they didn't, they weren't able to score on the power play. And then, Slavkovsky took a tough penalty, and then Ovechkin scored right off the bat, right off the penalty, right off the power play. And then all of a sudden it just turned the momentum against the Canadiens. They had a momentum. I think they were out shooting the Capitals 7-1 or 8-1 at that point, and then all of a sudden that goal just turned the tide. And that's something that you'll see from a young team that they have a hard time dealing with that adversity, right? They have a hard time gaining or regaining that momentum, bringing it back in their favor when things shift the wrong way. When, oftentimes when the other team scores against the run of play, you're dominating, you're carrying the play, you're the better team, and then all of a sudden the other team, scores a quick goal. That can really turn things around. So I think the lineup will be better next year. Like I said earlier, there are players, there's room for growth within. I don't know that they're going to go real far to grow from without. I don't know that they're going to spend a lot of time in the trade and free agent markets. If they do, it'll be because the right deal comes along. This game and this St. Louis Winnipeg game is like a friggin' WWF battle royale. It's crazy. Yeah, I suspect it'll come mostly from within. But you're right. The team will be better next year. The players, Hudson will continue to improve, and everybody else. Everyone's going to get better. Everyone's going to get better. I got to give props to Dobesh for being thrown into the fire. Looked calm throughout all games. Yeah, there was. I was on TikTok for most of the game tonight, guys, and there were people on there that were talking about how Dobesh, was the problem, and it kind of blew my mind a little bit to suggest, a kid who gets thrown into the fire like this in a really, really tough situation, he did, better than anybody could have possibly expected. We need to replace Savard with a similar style, a hulking defensive defenseman. Yeah, I don't know that I would call Savard a hulking defensive defenseman. Maybe he gets, put in there, the term hulking gets used because he kind of, got slow towards the end of his career. But I think a guy like Reinbacher, fits that mold if he's able to make the team next year. Gouli can play that role to an extent. We'll see. OMG Devin. OMG what? What are we talking about? Lucky? Liney ain't no stud either. Well, he ain't as ugly as that fella was, man. He ain't as ugly as that fella. Dvorak, Armia, Savard. Yeah, Savard will be gone. I don't know what will happen with Dvorak and Armia Asim. I suspect that I don't know. It depends on what they're prepared to sign for. I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be upset if one of those two returned. We'll see. I don't know. I don't know. Dvorak obviously brings, left-handed center. The Canadiens have a lack of left-handed centermen. He's the best face-off man. The Canadiens don't have great face-off men, and they don't have young players who can do that right now. There's no sort of young centermen who are dominant face-off type guys who are on the way. They don't have a ton of left-handed centermen coming along either. So it's hard to make conclusions about what's going to happen with those guys. Laine will re-sign under $6 million. I have no idea, Kartik. It's hard to say. It all depends on next year. It depends on what happens with next year, how he plays, how valuable the Canadiens view him to the organization, and whether he, whether he's somebody that the Canadiens are looking to keep on. PLW and I both have similar feelings about Patrick Laine. Asim says Florida just won. Okay, series over then, so Tampa Bay's out. But yeah, Laine was on a pace for 35 goals. Obviously he struggles. He's going to be up and down. He struggles with his confidence, and when he's confident, he plays really, really well. When he's not, he struggles. And I think the longer he continues to deal with his mental health concerns, I think the more he'll level off. And again, next year will be a big year for him. Again, I think he suffered from his leg injury, his knee injury, slowed him down. His skating was not great for the better part of this season. And maybe in the offseason he can fix that up. And once he gets, again, he's never been a speedster by any means, but I think once he gets his speed back, he's still only 26 years old. If he can work on his skating a little bit in the offseason and get his knee rehabilitated and get that back, I think the potential for him to be a good contributor on the team, I think, is definitely there. I was just wondering about the Habs and their D-man situation. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of questions there, Kartik. I mean, obviously Savard is gone. Savard is retired now officially. So they'll need a right-handed defenseman to come in. So I think Mayu and Reinbacher are the two main candidates for that job. Whether either or both of those guys are ready to make the team next year, we shall see. If they're both ready to make the team next year, then you probably look at somebody leaving, right? You see, if both Reinbacher and Mayu are able to make the team next year, then somebody's got to go. They can only, they're probably only going to dress 6 defensemen per game, and it raises some interesting questions. I don't know that both of them are going to be ready for next year. They obviously play very different games. Reinbacher probably is the better prospect, but he also hasn't played nearly as many games because of injury. He's been out quite a bit, and that's been a problem, right? That's been a problem for him, and his development obviously is slowed down a little bit by that. Mayu had a very productive season last year offensively in the American Hockey League. Maybe struggled a little bit defensively. This year, his defense seems to have improved over the season, although his offensive numbers are down. So again, it's going to be an interesting. It's going to be an interesting off season, and it's going to be an even more interesting training camp next year. When will they call Fowler up? I think they'll be hesitant to call him up at all next year, Kartik. I don't think they'll. The only reason they'll call him up next year, I think, would be in an emergency situation. I don't think they wanted to call Dobesh up this year, but they really had no choice when it came down to it. At Christmas time, Primo had struggled so mightily that they had really no choice. I think next year, I think you'll see the season start with Montembeault and Dobesh as the number one. I guess Primo has a chance to try and win back his backup job. He certainly did a good job as the backup. Sorry, I guess technically he became the number one eventually in Laval, and I think he'll get a chance to try and win that job back. But he, I think next year it's most likely that Montembeault and Primo start the season. Sorry, Montembeault and Dobesh start the season in Montreal, and you'll see. I'm not sure what Primo's contract situation is, but you'll most likely see Fowler and Primo in Laval. Fowler probably they'll want to give him the number one job. By the way, Laval won tonight. They won by a score of 3-2 was the final over the Cleveland Monsters. That was their first game of the playoffs. They had a bye in the first round. Cleveland ended up with 25 shots on goal. Jacob Fowler made 23 saves, evidently. The goals were Sean Farrell with 2 goals and Owen Beck with the third, and so they lead that series 1-0. So I don't really have any expectation of Fowler playing any significant number of games in the NHL next year. Goalies are typically slow to develop, and I think it's probably in everybody's best interest for him to spend most of next season, if not the next season after that, in Laval. This Jets Blues series or game is nasty. It is a pretty wild series. I'm just watching it in the background here, and it's kind of. Guys, I have no idea what just happened there. I have no idea what just happened. Everything just went. My Ecamm app went down, and that was it. What do we got here? Let's go back. Wow, we're way behind in the questions. We're way behind in the questions. The questions are all kind of weird here, guys. So I'm going to do my best to try and get back to them. Will Michael Hage be the Habs 2-center savior? No, I would think that's a bit of a unreasonable expectation for Michael Hage. I think Michael Hage probably is at least 2 years away from being ready to play in the NHL. He'll go back to Michigan next year, maybe even the year after that. He's got a lot of growing and development to do. I mean, he may turn out to be a really good player in the NHL someday, but to think that he's going to be the savior is probably an unreasonable expectation. Yeah, we will have an A team tonight. Randy, when we get there. New York reporter saying today that John Cooper is heading to Utah. Okay, interesting. I know that his contract, I think, is up in Tampa Bay right now, and there is some talk about him moving on. Utah, obviously, I mean, that would be a great move for them to have him take over. It should be interesting. I think. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of openings in the NHL right now for coaches, and if John Cooper is on the market, I think there will be a lot of opportunities for him to find a place to coach. Are we going to see Monty and Dobesh as the goalie tandem next year? I don't know. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I think that would be the leading possibility. Like, that's the most likely scenario. Those are the two guys who are the current, they currently hold those positions. And, there's obviously other people who may vie for that job, but, Primo obviously will want to have a say in that, and he'll get an invite to training camp. And he had a spectacular, second half of the season in the American Hockey League as far as, wins and losses and all of that is concerned. So, he'll obviously show up to training camp and have his say. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Rumbum says, I was really impressed with Jake Evans, Newhook, Gooley, and Anderson's play this series. As some guys I really don't really pay attention that much. Yeah, I mean, Jake Evans had a pretty solid series. I mean, Jake Evans fell off a little bit, certainly from the offensive perspective, after he signed his contract at Christmas time or in the new year. Newhook has played really, really well. He's a really good hockey player. He's, adapted and improved his game. He just struggles to finish. That's, one of his biggest, question marks. If Newhook were able to finish this year, I think he would have had probably 25 goals. But he just wasn't able to get there. Anderson, I think, was great. I think Anderson had a pretty solid year from beginning to end. He really adapted to his new role with the team, and he was able to excel in it. And so I'm pretty impressed with what Anderson was able to do. And I think Anderson probably has a pretty solid future with the Canadiens going forward. He still has a number of years left on his contract, and I think they'll probably keep him around. Obviously, he's making more money than you probably ideally would pay a third or fourth liner, but he continues to play well, and he continues to improve, and he continues to adapt to the new role he has on this team. And so I'm more than happy with the contributions of Josh Anderson. I don't see anyone in Laval that can push out Monty or Dobesh. Yeah, that's probably right. I won't say that there's not anybody that can do it. I think that there's probably nobody who are likely to do it. Again, Caden Primo was pretty special in the second half of the season in Laval. He certainly went down to Laval, accepted his demotion, and played really, really good hockey. Is it inconceivable that he would show up to training camp next year and beat anybody out for that job? Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. It's he could show up to training camp. He's a good goalie, right? He has a good goalie with a good future. He was a good prospect, and he just he had a tough first half of the season this year. So we shall see. Disappointing but great season, great series. Habs showed a real promising future. It's exciting, good experience for the boys. I agree with all of that, Philippe. Je suis d'accord avec toi. I couldn't have said it any better. Again, we're gonna feel crappy about the loss for a few days, but then when we go back and look at the season as a whole, I think we can probably be pretty positive about it. I agree with you on Army and Dvorak. I wouldn't mind either coming back. Yeah, I mean, they both play a role. They both play an important role, and it all depends on whether or not the Canadians feel like they can either live without that role or find somebody else to play it. This is probably the only game in this series where the refs actually did a good job, has lost fair and square, and I'm okay with that. Yeah, I don't think the refs were as bad tonight as they typically are. I'm not. Again, I have an issue with refereeing in general in the NHL. I think there's a major problem with it. I think the referees have way too much discretion as far as the way they referee the game, and that they don't apply the rules. They sort of use the rules to um, their own agenda. Tonight was probably not the worst of the games of the series. I don't disagree with that, but again, I'm not going to suggest that they had a good game tonight because I haven't seen a good game from the referees all year long, quite honestly. Habs will have the cup within the next 10 years. I think that's the plan. I think that's the plan for the Canadians to, that's part of the rebuild, right? Their rebuild is not to become a playoff team. Their rebuild is to win the Stanley Cup. And that's the long-term plan that they have, and that's the long-term plan that I think that they're sticking to. And yeah, we'll hopefully get a chance to see that again. It can be rude for some fans, but if Suzuki gets outpoint by other team, best center 9-2, this will never be good enough. Which centerman are we referring to? PLW. Did Suzuki only have 2 points in this series? Is that what you're saying? I don't know. I didn't really follow the stats. I know you're not a big Suzuki fan, PLW, but what's going on here? Skaters, all franchises, Canadiens, Montreal. Nick Suzuki, yes, Nick Suzuki did finish with 2 points this series, so that's not ideal. But again, nobody really lit the scoreboard up during this series. Caulfield with 4 and Hudson with 5 are really the only two. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it could be 2029, Kartik. Again, I don't know. I have no idea. I don't have a crystal ball, so I'm not gonna get into that. So, Suzuki was outpointed 9-2 by Strome. Okay, fair enough. I mean, the Canadians only had how many goals in the entire series? So I don't know. I thought Suzuki played fine. I'm not going to put any type of blame on Suzuki for this series. Anderson is definitely a playoff stud. What a great player he was in the playoffs. He's a great player all around. Philippe, I think he had he changed his role on the team. He changed his style of play a little bit this season, and I think it's been a pretty positive thing for the Canadians. Luciano, a little off topic here. Washington versus Carolina. My thoughts. I think Washington's going to have a hard time with Carolina in the next round. I think they're going to struggle against Carolina. Listen, guys, if you're over on TikTok, come on over and join us on YT, guys. The channel is right there. If you want to engage in the conversation and get everything going, come on and join us. I unfortunately am not able to answer questions on both platforms at the same time. But if you want to come over and join us over here, you're we're more than happy to have you join the conversation. So pop on over. Again, Recliner Sports 4, that is the name of the channel on YT. Open up your YT app. Pop on over. En français, en anglais, in French or in English. C'est une émission bilingue. We're happy to respond and to talk to you guys in French or English. So pop on over. Again, like I said, all you got to do is open your YT app and go to that channel right there. All good, Alf. You do you, man. Whatever you want. But again, if you want to be part of the conversation, come on and join us over here. Role players like Armia, Anderson, Evans are not appreciated enough as much as point players like Caulfield, Suzuki, Slavkovsky. Yeah, I'd say that's probably the case more often than not, Randy N. But again, I think this year, certainly in the first half of the season, guys like maybe not so much Armia, but Anderson, Evans, Gallagher, certainly were huge contributors and kept the team alive during those tough times early on in the season. What do I think about Laine next season? Because he definitely doesn't fit in this team culture, and he's like untradeable with his 1 year left. I disagree with you completely. Well, what is it that makes you think that he doesn't fit in with the team culture, Philippe? He has a contract. He's under contract for another year. I don't see any issue with him being with the team. Like I said, I don't agree with you about him and his fit within the team culture. I do agree with you that he's probably not likely to be traded with his $8.7 million contract. I think he'll probably stay with the team next year. Hopefully, like I said, in the offseason, he'll get the chance to improve his skating and to fully recover from his knee injury. The improved skating, I think, will help him be a little more effective on the ice. But again, he scored 21 goals this year. That's nothing to turn your nose up at. Again, I'm not saying that I know that he fits within the team culture, but again, I've seen nothing to support the argument that so many people are making that he doesn't fit within the team culture, right? Like, what are we complaining about? Like this idea that he's lazy or that he doesn't have work. I don't see the evidence of that, and I think that that argument I think is an unfair one and one that I haven't seen evidence of yet. How many points did Ovi have? I have no idea. Peter. I don't. I'd have to go look it up. I'm completely out on Patrick Laine right now. That effort in game 1 and 2 was unacceptable. Again, I disagree. Again, I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, the guy's injured. What effort are you talking about? Like, I stop buying into the goddamn narrative that is being fed down your throat by the losers and clowns at RDS, TVA, and BPM Sports. Stop buying into it. Draw your own conclusions about that player. Stop listening to Gilbert Delorme and Donald Brashear, not Donald Brashear, George Larac, and Martin LeMay, and these guys who continue to tell you that Patrick Laine is an anchor and a problem. Think for yourself. Right? Like it's not a realistic. The guy struggles with his confidence. And that is what you're seeing from him when he doesn't play well. Oftentimes it has to do with that. I have no problem with him coming out of the lineup. He was not producing. He also was dealing with an injury to his hand. I also think that he was having issues with his skating. But again, to buy into this narrative that's being shoved down your throat, that he's lazy, that he doesn't work hard, that he's a bad teammate, all this stuff, it's bullshit. Stop it. PLW, I like Suzuki, but he has a tendency to fall in slumps for too many games. He doesn't. It's not factual. PLW. Philippe Drolet, he had only one goal tonight. Peter, your stream is cutting in and out. Okay. Is that are we having trouble with the stream, guys? I'm not getting any indication on my end. I mean, it cut out there at one time and I had to restart it. Suzuki is definitely not I have no problem with Suzuki. I think Suzuki's been a fantastic leader on this team. I think he's contributed from top to bottom on this team. I've got no problem with Nick Suzuki. So I don't have a problem with him. Tap that screen, guys, over on TikTok, guys. Tap the screen if you're watching. If you're over here, guys, subscribe down below and give us a thumbs up, guys. I see there's 13 people watching right now live on YT. Give us a thumbs up if you're enjoying the content. We certainly do appreciate it. We do appreciate everybody to subscribe. We're trying to get to 500 subscribers. We're right up around 350 now. So if you're in here watching and you're not yet subscribed, please please do so. It's really easy. It's just one button down here-ish, I think, down there. If you're watching in a replay, same. It would be awesome. We would love to have you guys be part of our group. We're trying to build a place here where you guys can come and watch the games and then come afterwards and enjoy a place where you can talk about the games and what we're doing our best. So if you want to be a part of it, then we certainly would love to have you. Carolina can't score, and Washington can roll 4 lines and are much more rugged. Okay, well, again, you asked me for my opinion, Peter. I gave it. I think that Washington's going to struggle against Carolina. I think Carolina is going to give them a much bigger handful than the Canadiens gave them, and I don't think that the Capitals looked all that dominant to me against Montreal. Obviously, they beat Montreal 4-1, but I thought the Canadiens were in most of the games. They certainly dominated the Capitals in one of those games. I think that the Hurricanes are going to be a much bigger challenge, and I don't know that the Capitals have what it takes to beat them. Line A does fit the team culture. I mean, like I said, I have no idea, Kartik. All I know is the comments that I've heard from Marty St. Louis about them, embracing him with the team and trying to make it so that he enjoys playing hockey again, and him being part of the family. So I really don't know that. Suzuki est un joueur de séquence. He's not a streaky player. I don't agree with that, PLW. I don't agree with that. He was a pretty steady performer all year round. I thought he was pretty solid from beginning to end. Um, did he have times where he was better than others? Absolutely. I think everybody on the team did, but I'm not gonna suggest that he's a streaky player, because that certainly isn't borne out by the facts. Laine just needs a little more confidence in himself. Otherwise, a great player. Yeah, I mean, he's expressed that very, very openly. That he struggles with his confidence. When he's not confident, he doesn't play well. When he is, he's pretty. He can be pretty devastating on the ice. People complaining about Laine while he was fourth in goals with 20 and 52 games. I thought he had 21 goals, but I'll give you that if it's just 20, Randy. I thought he had 21, but I thought he played solidly. Obviously, his game between power play and 5-on-5 was very different. But again, I think he struggled with his skating. I don't think his skating, fully, came back after his injury. Um, Lenny's name always comes up in conversation, Randy. And again, this is a side effect of the narrative that is being fed by RDS, TVA, and BPM Sports, right? They're feeding this narrative, and people are seeing it on their TikTok feeds. They're seeing it on their Facebook feeds. They're seeing it on their Instagram feeds. They're seeing it on their YouTube. They're seeing it everywhere. This idea that these commentators from the Francophone media in Montreal are feeding into this idea that Patrick Laine is a bad person. And much of their criticism of him is unfair. Much of their criticism of him is inaccurate, and much of their criticism of him is deceptive. Right? They've gone out and they've doctored videos, not doctored, but they've edited videos in such a way that makes him appear bad. Certainly, the video that they did of him giving an interview at the Four Nations Face-Off, where it made him look like he was questioning and criticizing Marty St. Louis as his coach. I mean, it was completely offside. And frankly, from a journalistic integrity perspective, all three of those media outlets should be embarrassed with the way that they've handled uh, the Patrick Laine situation in this season. I would sign him for under $6 million in a heartbeat if I had. Well, again, it all depends on what happens next year. I'm not prepared to make that go that far, Kartik. But if like I said, if he can contribute, I have no problem with the contributions he made offensively to the team this year. Unfortunately, there wasn't much contributions from a 5-on-5 point of view, but it is what it is. Uh, PLW sounds like a Suzuki hater. Yeah, he's not. I don't know if he's a hater. I don't know. He's. I think he's got a bit of a jaded view on Nick Suzuki. Nick Suzuki is and has been the best player on this team for 3 years. Um, he's the most steady and solid performer on the team. PLW tends to be very much focused on the offensive production aspect of the game, which I think has been pretty steady and solid from Suzuki in any event. But again, there's a lot of other ways that Nick Suzuki contributes to this team, whether it's leadership or whether it's making other players on the team better. So um, I'm on board with Nick Suzuki. With Savard gone next year, who do I see filling his shoes? We'll see at training camp, Philippe. We'll see, right? It could be Reinbacher, it could be Mayu. I think they're obviously going to try to bring in somebody. They're going to have to bring in at least one, maybe two right-handed defensemen next year, hopefully. Um, but we'll see. Sorry, Randy. It doesn't. It doesn't appear that anybody else is having an issue with it. So maybe it's something on your end. I'm not sure what's going on with the sound on your end, Randy. This might be a tough spot to fill because not a lot of player can be that efficient in PK. Yeah, you're right. I think that replacing Savard will be a different. Again, I think that you'll look for guys like Gouli to be able to step into that defensive role, whether it's on the PK or in tight situations. I think you'll look for Gouli to be a little more solid in that situation. If Reinbacher is able to make the lineup next year, then maybe he can do that as well. But again, the left-handed, right-handed dynamic will be a big issue as well. So we'll see. Muck says, after this series, would you agree Habs need to add more size to the roster? No, I wouldn't. Not at all. Not even in remotely the least. They're the seventh biggest team in the NHL right now. They're only about a pound lighter on average than the Washington Capitals. I think experience is far greater a factor in this series than size was. I got to run to the bathroom, guys. I'll be 2 seconds. Stand by. Oh, here we are, guys. Yeah, I know PLW. This is your. I don't agree with you on this, and I haven't seen the numbers to support your argument. Um, I haven't seen the numbers to support this. I think that Nick Suzuki has been the best player on the Canadiens for each of the last 3 years. Um, he is their best forward offensive production wise. He is their best forward defensively. He is their most consistent forward. He is the leader. He is the one the team looks up to. He's the one who performs when things matter, when the games, when things come to push, when push comes to shove. He's the guy that is the one who performs that level. He's been their number one guy from the very beginning. So I'm not again, I haven't seen the numbers to support, you haven't provided the numbers to support your argument. I haven't seen those numbers, and I'm not buying it. You can continue to push it if you like, but I'm not buying it. Would you give the spot on the first PP to Demidov next year? Or would you still leave it to Line if both are healthy? Again, I think a lot is going to come down to what happens in training camp next year, guys. It's going to be all pretty fluid, right? Like, the idea that they're going to make a decision now about what happens for the entirety of next season, right? We've seen the Canadiens power play evolve this year. We've seen it's going to be an evolving situation, right? It's not going to be like so for me, I would expect that they'll go to training camp, and I think Demidov will probably be given the opportunity to win the spot on that first power play. But the idea that the power play won't change all year, or that there won't be room for other players to get in there or to get opportunities on there, again, it's not realistic to believe that. Of course, he needs help. PLW. I mean, they all need help, right? This team is continue. It's in a rebuild, right? It needs to continue to get better. Like if they can bring in a guy who can play, center, who can get 85, 90 points a year, yeah, they're gonna love that. Ovi said crowd was loud as Bell Center crowd. Yeah, okay, whatever. Tristan, PLW, Suzuki had 65 on 5 points this year. Again, I'm not going to get into that whole debate. I mean, again, the team will continue to improve around Suzuki. Suzuki's not the problem, right? Suzuki's a 90-point guy essentially this year. There's room for him to continue to get better as Slavkovsky improves. His numbers will obviously improve as Caulfield's will. Um, I have no issue with the first line. If a guy comes along and wants to, outplay Suzuki and take over that first line center job, then great. But, for now, I don't think there's any debate whatsoever about Nick Suzuki and his ability to be the number one center and the leader on this team. Do I think the Habs have earned the right to trade their draft picks for roster players? I don't understand what that means. How do you earn that right? I think that the Canadiens would be silly to start trading their draft picks for roster players. Muck, I think that the Canadiens are in a rebuild. I think that the commitment and the plan is to build through from within through their own organization. I think that the plan is not to go out there and start trading away draft picks and prospects to try and bring in established players. Certainly not established players over the age of 30, let's say, 28 maybe. So I don't know how you earn that. I think the Canadiens have earned the right to keep this group together and to continue to grow from within and to continue to grow from within their organization, and not to sort of be a team that goes out and builds based on players who are currently playing on other teams. I don't know if you answered my question about Demidov. Can he play for Laval in the playoffs? I don't know the answer to the question, Randy N. I don't know the answer to the question, honestly. Uh, can I? Let me see if I can get an answer to you, Laval. So which players can be sent down to Laval now, and which ones are actually going to Laval? Primo for sure. It says here that Demidov can't. It also says that Kapanen can't. Primo can be sent back down. Heineman is eligible, and Dobesh is eligible. According to this person, Demidov can't, and Kapanen can't. Hudson probably could, but probably won't. So the answer appears to be no. But again, this is not a reliable source. So I can't really I'm not prepared to say that. I don't the answer is I don't know. I don't know, Randy. I've seen this fun question on Francophone Media. Yeah, it's not a fun question, Philip. The people who asked that question. So, do you think Crosby is going to change teams, and if he wants to come to Montreal, would you be ready to give up for him? So again, that's not a fun question to me. It's it's a dumb question. I mean, again, I apologize, but the question was asked by Martin Lemay, and Martin Biron said that he thought that the Canadiens should trade, what was it, Michael Hage and 3 first-round draft picks for Crosby. It's idiotic. It's idiotic. The Canadiens don't want Sidney Crosby. Obviously, yes, if you could get Sidney Crosby and have him for a year or two to sort of teach the young players, some leadership and, have some of that rub off, yeah, that's great. But you're not trading 3 first-round draft picks and another first-round draft pick, essentially, basically four first-round draft picks for years 39 or 38 and 39 of Sidney Crosby. You're in a rebuild. I apologize if I'm taking this out on you, Philippe, but I really find that a silly question. I find that to be a silly question, honestly. When I saw it, I know that BPM Sports had it plastered all over social media today. And when I saw it, honestly, I kind of questioned whether or not Martin Lemay should be allowed to ever be on the radio again, and whether or not they should just take away Martin Biron's microphone forever and ever and ever. I don't like it. Sam King, for those complaining about losing, Habs weren't beating the Caps, unfortunately. I don't think anybody here has been complaining about the loss, Sam King. I don't agree with you that the Habs weren't beating the Caps. I think they certainly played a good hockey, and the possibility was there. It would have been a long shot, and it would have been tough. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's all house money, and the Canadiens were, happy. I don't say they're happy to make the playoffs, but the fact that they did make the playoffs made this season more than successful. I agree they should build from within. However, I think the division is going to be even more competitive next year. Teams like Buffalo and Detroit might step up, and we could see the Habs take a step back. I don't see any reason to believe that, Muck. I don't see Buffalo and Detroit making a step up. I think the Canadiens are doing very well sticking to their plan. And if they do, it's not the end of the world, right? The Canadiens are on a plan. If Buffalo and Detroit make a step up by going into the free agent market, then they're only hurting their future down the road, right? The Canadiens, I think, sticking to building from within, that is their plan. That is the right plan. That is the plan that is most likely to lead to success. And trying to accelerate a rebuild and trying to, move things forward when you're not ready, or before it's the right time, is a recipe for disaster, right? The enemy of any rebuild is impatience. And, if Buffalo wants to go out and sign a couple of big name free agents and, temporarily jump the Montreal Canadiens in the Eastern Conference, then that's great for them. But in the long run, that's going to hurt them. It's not going, we've seen it from Detroit already, right? Going out and signing Patrick Kane and Tarasenko and all these guys because they thought they had a chance to make the playoffs. I think the Canadiens are much better served to stick to their rebuild and to build from within. Yeah, I don't love that question, Philip, and unfortunately, I think it's like a question that the francophone media, puts out there. Those kinds of things, they put those kinds of things out there a lot without much. What's up, Zach? They put those kinds of things out there without much. There's the chances of Sidney Crosby coming to Montreal are next to none. Um, the the viability or the feasibility or the smartness of the Canadians trading 4 first round draft picks to bring in a 37-year-old veteran hockey player demonstrates a complete lack of understanding as to what the Canadians are doing right now. Like for somebody like Martin LeMay, who his job is to follow, to analyze, and to write about the Montreal Canadiens. For him to raise a question like that, especially in the middle of a playoff series or at the end of a playoff series, it's just like it's crazy. It's craziness, right? Like it just demonstrates to me that he has no understanding of the team. He has no understanding of what the team is trying to do. He has no understanding of what the team's plan is. And all he's really trying to do is to try and get some clicks. Like he's trying to develop or to create interaction on social media. That's all, and to get people to listen to his show. And I mean, I guess he succeeded in that, but I'm not a fan of that. I don't think I'm going to do the A team tonight, Randy. I don't think I'm going to do the scoreboard or the A team. I think I'm going to take a pass on it. It's the last game of the year, so I'm not going to bother with it. So I'm just going to keep going with the conversation here for a little bit longer. I just don't know how well the fan base would react if they don't make the playoffs next year when they did this year. I get they are in a rebuild, but I could see them making some splashes in the offseason. Well, you're using some catchphrases that really get my hackles up, Muck. Making a splash means nothing to me. If the Canadians are out there in the free agent market or the trade market trying to quote unquote make a splash, then I think they've already failed. Um, how would the fan base react if they didn't make the playoffs next year after making it this year? Yeah, maybe they'd be negative about it. And again, I don't really see that as being likely because I do think that they will build from within. They will improve from within. The only player they're losing necessarily is David Savard. Obviously they might lose Armia or Dvorak or whomever. And obviously replacing Savard will have its challenges on the defensive core. But at the end of the day, I'm not that concerned about that. I'm not that worried about it. I don't think that the Canadians are. I don't think that the Canadians are. The management is not managing itself or managing the team based on that aspect of the 2-2 Winnipeg and St. Louis. On that aspect, they're not. I mean, again, they are worried about what the fans think. I'm not going to suggest that they don't care what the fans think. I think they do, but they're not governing themselves by what the fans think in that sense. Tap that screen, guys, over on TikTok if you're over there. And if you want to join us on YT, guys, come on over here. The channel is right there. Recliner Sports 4. Open up your YT app and come on over. If you're over here on YT, please subscribe. The button is down here, somewhere down there. Hit the subscribe button. If you're enjoying the content, hit the thumbs up. We've only got 7 thumbs up, guys. There's 12 of you here watching at the moment and only 7 thumbs up. So maybe you can hit that like button and get things moving here. I think Montembeault has played really well in the playoffs for the few games he played. I'm curious to know your view on where he stands as a top goalie in the NHL. Do you see him in the top 5, top 10, top 20? I think he's certainly in the top 20. I think he's probably in the top between 10 and 15. He's not going to be a spectacular goalie. He's not going to be a guy with gaudy numbers like Connor Hellebuck or Vasilevsky or guys like that. But again, I've said it 100 times on this show before. Like he's a guy who makes the saves you need when you need them, and that's really all you really ask for from a goalie. You want a goalie who will give you an opportunity to win games. Yeah, do you want a Hellebuck? Absolutely. Do you want a Shesterkin? Yeah, you want guys like that. You want guys who can, can steal games for you or can stand on their head. But at the end of the day, if your goalie is contributing at the same level as the rest of your team, and he's giving you, the saves that you need in order to win on a night in and night out basis, then you're doing pretty good. And I think the Canadiens had two goalies who were capable of doing that for them this year. Obviously, Caden Primo wasn't that guy in the first half of the season, but they didn't really have much choice but to keep him around until Christmas time. But, in the second half of the season, they had both Dobesh and Montembeault, who for the most part were guys who would go out and make the saves that needed to be made and gave Montreal a chance to win on any given night. I don't think there were very many games in the second half of the season where you could, legitimately look at the goaltending and say, the goaltending didn't give the team a chance to win tonight. The goaltending was so bad that the team didn't really have a chance to win. So, from that perspective, I like Montembeault. I think he's a solid starter in the NHL. Do I think he's the guy who will be, is he going to be that guy forever? In a perfect world, Montembeault, eventually will take a backseat to, guys like Fowler and Dobesh. But for now, he's good, and there's always a possibility that, if he continues to improve and continue, I mean, he's still young, he could still be a solid goaltender in the NHL. He is a solid goaltender in the NHL. He could become, if he continues to improve, he could become that guy who is a no doubt starter who could, if Fowler falters or if Dobesh doesn't develop the way he could, then there's lots of different things that could happen. I don't think the Canadiens have a ton of goaltenders in their organization, but between Dobesh, Fowler, and Montembeault, I think they're in decent shape. Now, does that mean that, like, if Montembeault comes out next year and absolutely stinks it out, are they in trouble a little bit? Yeah, maybe. And if, Dobesh, can't get the job done, in a way that, Caden Primo couldn't get it done this year, are they in trouble? Yeah, could be. But I think they're okay as far as, right now, for a number one goalie. Randy says, I think part of a rebuild is to always move up in the standings. If Habs don't make the playoffs next year, it would sting. Well, yeah, I don't disagree with that, Randy. And they've moved up in the standings in each of the last 3 years. But again, we've heard the Canadiens talk a number of times about the fact that, development isn't always linear, right? Sometimes you take a step backwards. That's not ideal, and I'm not expecting that. And I'm not saying that happens, but if the Canadiens call up, Meilleure and Reinbacher next year, and they drop, obviously Savard goes away, and maybe Struble or somebody is gone, and they bring in two young defensemen, and they struggle a little bit, and they finish with, the same number of points they had this year, but Detroit takes a bit of a jump ahead, and the Canadiens finish 2 points out of a playoff spot. I don't think it would be the end of the world. It wouldn't be perfect. It wouldn't be ideal. It wouldn't be what you're looking for. But if the Canadiens finish with 92 or 93 points next year, and Detroit finishes with 95, and they make the playoffs, and the Canadiens, again, it's, I'm not suggesting anything. I'm not saying anything's going to. What I'm saying is that it's just not going to be the end of the world. It's not going to be the end of the world. Considering the Habs were second worst on high danger shot and chances allowed, Monty leading the Habs to the playoffs needs more attention. Yeah, again, I struggle with statistics that take the entire season into consideration. I think the Canadiens were a team of two different seasons this year. I think there was a very different team before Christmas and after Christmas. Obviously they gave up a ton of high danger chances and a ton of goals in the first half of the season. Their numbers, are very, very skewed if you take the season as a whole, as opposed to breaking that up. We saw a number of games where they gave up, 8, 7, 8, 6, 7, 8, 9 goals. What's up, RDP? So again, you're saying the same thing here, PLW. I think there were a number of games early in the year where they where they struggled. They had an 8-goal game against Seattle. They had a 9-goal game, I think, against Pittsburgh. There was a 7-goal game against the Rangers. So there were a lot of outliers, I would say. Muck says, I think they should sign some veteran forwards who have lots of playoff experience. Not saying it should be top 6 guys, but more so bottom 6 and depth defense. I couldn't disagree with you more, Muck. I couldn't disagree with you more. That goes completely contrary to the rebuild. It goes completely contrary to the plan that the Canadiens have put in place for this team. Signing veteran forwards and veteran defensemen, I couldn't possibly be further in disagreement with you than I am on that opinion. I think they need to build from within. I think that's their plan, to build from within. Going out and signing veterans, I don't think is the answer. I think they've got plenty of experience on this team. I don't think they need more experience. I think they need to, they don't need to be bringing in veteran players who will take away opportunities from young players to become part of the team and to develop into the roles that they will have long term on this team and in this organization. So, on that opinion, Muck, I couldn't be further in disagreement with you. Philip, I'm excited for Fowler. The guy seems really promising, and from the interviews I've seen, it looks like he's a really good head on his shoulders. However, I feel like finding a good goalie is like a gamble. Yeah, I mean, any prospect is a gamble. You never know what they're going to do. Goalies, especially. Goalies take a long time to develop, but like you say, Fowler has proven himself at every level along the way. He interviews really, really well. I think that's one of the things the Canadiens liked about him. They liked his drive, they liked his attitude, they liked his personality. I think that's one of the unspoken or underrated aspects of the rebuild is the fact that they do look at the personality and the way these kids think when they draft them. And Fowler is a prime example of that, right? And there's actually was a really good interview with Fowler. I want to say it was around Christmas time. It was on was it on NHL.com? I can't really remember, but he talked about the fact that he wants to be different and he wants to sort of break the mold when it comes to goalies and the idea that goalies take forever to develop. And I thought it was a really good interview. I highly recommend you trying to find. I think it was on NHL.com. I think it was on the French NHL.com. I can't remember who did the interview, but it was really well done. Actually, the Habs are the worst team in high danger shots allowed, tied with San Jose as per Money Puck. Again, stats that take in the entire season. PLW. I mean, if you take in the entire season, I think you're doing yourself. Stats are supposed to provide you with a snapshot, with a view of what a team is capable of and not. And if you look at the Canadiens and you take into account the entirety of the season, I think you probably aren't getting the right picture. You aren't getting the right snapshot of what this team is and what this team was this year. They were a very different team from December 23rd and before versus December 23rd and after. Whether it's high danger chances, whether it's high danger, scoring chance, all of that stuff. There was a significant shift in the way this team plays hockey after the Christmas break. RDP. There's a kid from Latvia who plays net and is Montreal's property. Yes, Mika Vikvaniks, I believe is who you're talking about. RDP. Interesting kid. He was playing in the BCHL, I believe, and he now is playing or was playing for H.A.D. Will be playing in Newfoundland for the Newfoundland team in the QMJHL as H.A.D. Bathurst is. Winnipeg just scored to make it 3-2. He will be playing in Newfoundland in St. John's for the Newfoundland Regiment. I think, as you say, is their new team name. I think there was some talk about him maybe going U.S. college at some point. I'm not sure what his long-term plans are as far as that's concerned. But he did transfer from the BCHL to uh, the QMJHL midway through the season last year. So, yeah, Mika Vikvanits is another. There's a couple of other goalies. Joe Verbetic is playing in the what league is Joe Verbetic in? I think he's in the. Is he in the East Coast League? In the Fuel, and then there's another goalie over in Russia. I'm drawing a blank on his name right now. So yeah, so that's kind of the situation with the goaltenders in the Canadiens organization. Um, Questions seem to be drying up a little bit here, guys. Owen Beck, Mailloux, and Reinbacher, give them a shot at the NHL. I think they will get an opportunity at training camp next year. Monty Starter and Dobesh being backup for next season. Again, all of those things Big Tuna I think will really go will be determined at training camp next year, right? There will be a training camp next year, and all of these young players will have an opportunity to make the team. Owen Beck will have an opportunity to make the team. Mailloux will have an opportunity to make the team, and so will Reinbacher. Um, as far as both Reinbacher and Mailloux making the team next year, I mean, you look at the defensemen that the Canadiens have, and so like if both Reinbacher and Mailloux make the team, then you're probably looking at one of the guys not making the team, right? Like if he makes the team, then Struble, Jack-Eye, um, probably those are the two main candidates. If both Reinbacher and Mailloux make it, one of those two guys probably doesn't make it. If Owen Beck makes the team, then does that mean Dvorak is gone? Does that mean what does that mean? I mean, I think it's pretty clear that Jake Evans will be back. What about Kapanen, right? So lots of questions. I think training camp will be interesting next year, and it'll be fun to watch how these things play out in the off season and in training camp. People talk a lot about Reinbacher and how good he is in Laval, but not going to lie, his injuries history is scaring me a lot. He hasn't played in the NHL yet, and I'm worried he might not make it. Yeah, I have no problem. I would be concerned about his injuries as well. But I mean, you can't do anything about that. Um, you can't do anything about it. I don't think he's obviously had injuries. Because he had injuries doesn't mean that he'll always have injuries. He's playing really well in Laval. Last year and this year. But that's the question that remains to be. Anytime you have a prospect, it's going to be a tough call. But again, I mean, as far as I would much rather have a player who played well and had some injuries than a player who was healthy and looked like they were a flop, right? So when Reinbacher's been healthy and when he's played, he's looked quite good. So all we can really do is control what we can control and hope that he can stay healthy and become a solid defenseman. You're right; it would be a hard hit if he was a fifth overall pick and wasn't able to play in the NHL because he was injured. But it's a lot different than him being a fifth overall pick and not playing in the NHL because he wasn't good enough, right? So um, I'm not he's a young kid. He's had a couple of injuries that have kept him out, but when he's played, he's been solid, and we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Do I think the Leafs could choke? I mean, they definitely could. Um, I think it's going to be, it's going to be a tough task for Ottawa to complete, a comeback from down 3-0. Ottawa is a good team, but Toronto's a pretty solid team too. I think Toronto's probably got their best team heading into the playoffs than they've had in a really long time, and I think it's unlikely that they lose this series to Ottawa. But could it happen? Absolutely. Does Montreal make the playoffs next season, and is Laine on that team? Uh, he almost certainly is on the team. I mean, he's got another year left on his contract, RDP, so I don't see Laine going anywhere. What his role on the team is, I think, will depend on his ability to contribute to the team, much like it was this year. Do they make the playoffs next season? I think they, again, I think they probably put up a similar number of points next year as they did this year. You know, 93, 94, 95. I would be surprised if they don't make the playoffs next year. Is it possible that, a team like Detroit or New York or Buffalo maybe, leapfrogs them? Yeah, it's possible, but I don't think it's very likely. I think we're more than likely to see improvements from, most guys on the roster. If Suzuki has a better year, if Caulfield has a better year, if Slavkovsky has a better year, if Demidov can contribute, if Gooley, Hudson, all these guys have a better year. I mean, again, I don't see very many guys falling out of this roster, right? The only guy who is guaranteed not to be on the team next year is David Savard, and so I don't know that they I don't see them getting worse. That's what's great about Suzuki. He doesn't miss a single game. Well, there's a lot of things that are great about Suzuki. He doesn't miss a lot of games. He, contributes. He's a consistent performer. He's good defensively. He's good offensively. He's a good leader. All kinds of good stuff. What's up, Dax Rush? What's going on with you, man? Fun question. Would you rather have Jack Hughes that plays 60% of the season or a Nick Suzuki who plays every game of the season? I would rather have Nick Suzuki playing every game of the season. Xavier, what's up? What's up? Phil, Susie, all the way. Okay. Renee, welcome. Yo. Renee, Xavier, and Dax Rush, welcome to the show, guys. I think you guys are all new here. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so down below. We'd love to have you guys be part of the group, part of the gang. Join us after, again, there's going to be no more games for the Canadiens this year. But we do a show, Habs After Dark, after every Canadiens game. We also do Habs Therapy Day, and we will probably continue that through the off-season every Wednesday evening. So if you do want to be a part of Recliner Sports and part of our group here, then certainly hit that thumbs up button and hit the subscribe button down below. That would be awesome. We would really appreciate it. If they lose, I think Marner, Tavares, and Matthews are gone. Not a chance. Zero chance. I mean, Marner might be gone because his contract is up. Matthews is not going anywhere. And Tavares probably is going to stick around. He'll probably sign a lesser contract. But all three of those guys being gone is almost certainly an impossibility. Dax Rush is now joining us on YouTube. He was on Twitch a minute ago. Now he's on YouTube. What do I think the Habs target for the Habs? What do I think the target for the Habs this offseason? I think a second-line center. I don't think they're going to go crazy looking for a second-line center, Dax Rush. I think if they can make a good deal, they will. But again, I don't think they're going to spend a whole lot of time worrying about unrestricted free agents or trades. If they get the right trade offer, I think they'll do it. UFAs, I don't think they're going to spend a lot of time worrying themselves about that. Maybe they'll go out and do an offer sheet for an RFA. We shall see. But again, I think there's a sentiment amongst the fan base that the Canadiens are desperate to go out and get a second line center in the offseason, and I don't see it. I don't think they're nearly as desperate as some people think they might be. Rene, WMCA, I don't really understand what that means. What are my thoughts on Pierre-Luc Dubois? Seems to me like he is becoming the expected player we all see in him. Yeah, I think he probably had his best season in the NHL. Again, it just goes to show you that sometimes if a player is in the right mental state and is in a situation to succeed, they can do well. They can do well, and it's just because you have a bad year doesn't mean that you're done. It doesn't mean that you're not capable. There's a mental aspect to the game of hockey and really any sport, and it's not just all about the physical aspect. So, René says, pas de frein avec éole. Je comprends pas, René. Je comprends pas tes commentaires. Pas de frein, no brakes avec éole. Je comprends pas la deuxième partie de votre question. Sorry, man. Je m'excuse, René, mais je comprends pas ton question. I've been here once already, saw you were on, so I'm going to chat a bit. Perfect, Xavier. I appreciate it. Thank you for coming by. I don't know how much longer we're going to stay on. We'll stay on for a little bit longer. If you're not subscribed yet, then hit down below. If you hit the notification bell, you will get notified when we go live. So, you won't have to come looking for us. Philippe, 100% of the core 4 is going away. 100% of the core 4 is going away. I disagree. If you're talking about Toronto, if you think that Matthews, Nylander, Marner, and Tavares are all going away, if they don't, that's not happening. Matthews is never leaving the Leafs unless it's a UFA situation where he signs somewhere else. I don't disagree with that. Renee with the thumbs up. Tavares had problems with CRA. Would be an irritating thing for him. Yeah, I don't think that's going to be the driving force between whether he stays in Toronto or not, PLW. I think his commitment to Toronto, to the city, to the team, to the Maple Leafs is pretty solid. I think he'll probably sign for less money, but I don't see it likely that he moves on. It's possible, but we'll see. Where does Demidov start next season, in the NHL or the AHL? I think it's more likely the NHL, Dax Rush. But again, I think it'll come down to next year's training camp to see where he falls. Just like anybody else on the team, right? People will earn their spots or not at training camp. If Leafs choke, it's time to start a rebuild. I'm being serious. Okay, I know you're being serious. I just don't see that being a. I don't see that being a likelihood, Muck. I don't see that being. Based on the history of what I've seen from Brendan Shanahan and the Leafs organization, I don't see them going into a rebuild. One, I'm not 100%. I'm not convinced that they're going to lose this series. I'm also not very confident that they're going to win a Stanley Cup. I don't think they're going to win a Stanley Cup this year, obviously. But we'll see. I just don't think that I don't think that any rash decisions are going to be made as far as Nylander and Matthews are concerned, based on the results of this playoff series. Not going all the way, but at least one. Well, again, Marner's contract is up, so I think it's very likely that if they don't succeed in the playoffs this year, they either make a trade or they let him walk. I think that's a possibility. But as far as Matthews and Nylander are concerned, who are both under long-term contracts, I don't really see them. Moving on. Teams rebuilding, dreams to nail players like Matthews, Nylander, Marner. So why rebuilding? Teams rebuilding players to nail. I don't understand that comment, PLW. Sorry, man. Okay, what do you do if you were the Leafs manager? Because I would trade at least one of them. I don't know what I would do. I would probably have found a way to trade Mitch Marner in the this year. I probably would look to I would probably let Marner go. I would probably look to sign Tavares for somewhere under $7 million. Obviously, you've got no choice but to keep Matthews and Nylander. I don't think the trade market. Then I would try to find, I think support on their third and fourth line, bottom six forwards, guys who can be solid on the bottom six forward. I think their defense is okay right now. I just think they need more depth. But again, they haven't lost this series against Ottawa yet, so I'm not panicking in any way. So it's not like I think they've got to do something. It's Marner. I'm not re-signing Marner for upwards of $12 million. So if that's the option, then he's going. But what do I think of, or what were my thoughts on Dobesh performance there? Winnipeg scored. I thought Dobesh did well. For a young kid with very little NHL experience to step into a situation the way he did under the circumstances that he did, as far as, being called to carry the load, relatively suddenly with Montembeault going down with an injury. I thought he did quite well. Obviously, there were a couple goals here and there that, you would have liked to have back, but I think he certainly was not the problem, and he gave the Canadiens a chance to win in every game that he was in. I heard Demidov is to play NHL or he's back to USSR. Maybe the contract, no idea, something I heard. Well, first of all, the USSR doesn't exist. His contract would not send him back to Russia. It wouldn't be a NHL or Russia scenario. I don't know where you would have heard that, but that doesn't make a ton of sense, RDP. It would be useless for the Leafs to rebuild. They already have players that a rebuilding team would dream to get via a rebuild. I don't agree with that, PLW. I disagree that they're not at the point in their cycle where a rebuild would make a lot of sense. What the problem with Toronto is that they've got players who are, they're superstar players, but unfortunately they've got them at the point of their careers where they're making $12 and $13 million a year, right? A rebuild thrives or strives to win when they have their best players on their, first or second contracts, right? The time for Toronto to win was when Marner, Nylander, and Matthews were making $7, $8, $9 million a year, not when they were making $11, $12, $13 million a year. It's like Montreal, right? They want to win when Suzuki is making $8 million and Caulfield is making $8 million and Slavkovsky's making $7 million and Hudson's making whatever. If they don't win in that window of 6-7 years, then all of a sudden, you're looking at a Suzuki who's making $10 million a year. You're looking at a Hudson who's making, this much, that much, whatever, right? That's part of a rebuild, right? You create a window. And, you have to make a decision. If they don't win in that 6 or 7 year window, then they have to decide, whether or not they let those guys go or whether they bring, or whether, what do they do, right? And so when you get to the point where you've got 2 or 3 guys who are making more than 13 or 4, same with Edmonton, right? Edmonton's not going to win the Stanley Cup with Connor McDavid making $16 million a year and Leon Draisaitl making $14 million a year and Darnell Nurse making $9.5 million a year and Evan Bouchard making $10 million a year. It's not going to work, right? So they've got to decide, it's Colorado, right? Not signing Rantanen. They didn't sign Rantanen because it didn't make sense for them to have 3 guys making $12 or $13 million a year. That's as much a part of a rebuild as anything else. I think Marner could be a Blackhawk next year. Yeah, possibly. Very possible. It doesn't make sense for Chicago to do it, but it's possible. I wouldn't do it if I was rebuilding like Chicago is, but Chicago hasn't really demonstrated that they're, rebuilding in any real sense. So I'm not, nothing's a surprise to me. Dobos was great for a second goalie that stayed cold for a while, meaning he did not play a lot before the playoffs. Yeah. I thought he did well. I thought he did well to step in and do what he did. I agree. William H. Just facts. Matthews has improved. He can be a big player when it matters. Not saying he can't. But like at some point, it's just not working. What do you do? I don't agree with that, Philip. I don't think that Marner or that Matthews hasn't proved that he can be a big player when it matters. I think the bigger problem with Toronto has been that they haven't surrounded him with the right players. Right? It hasn't been necessarily about Matthews. I mean, obviously, when you have a great player like Matthews, you hope that he could put the whole team on his back and carry them to a championship, but that's not realistic, right? So I think the bigger issue with Toronto has been the fact that they're paying so much money to so few players that they haven't been able to create the supporting group or uh, the supporting characters, or that they need in order to allow guys like Matthews and Marner and Nylander to win. Very similar to the way Edmonton has been, right? There's no doubt that Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are great hockey players, but until last year, they didn't really have them surrounded with the right guys to win it. And even now, that looks like it's in doubt. So, you can't afford to pay all of your money or all of your salary cap to so few players, because sometimes you need to have those third and fourth line guys who can make a difference. Does Logan Mailloux make the NHL next season? If he plays well enough in training camp, yes. But who knows, right? It'll be up to him, right? Like next year, there will be a number of guys at training camp who will get a chance. David Savard will be gone, so there will be at least one spot open on the defensive group, and Mailloux will be one of those guys who will be competing for that job. Along with guys like Reinbacher, Engstrom, Struble, Jack Eye. There'll be lots of guys competing for that job. I can't predict what'll happen next year. It's been 10 years and no results at all. Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't disagree with Toronto, but again, I don't know that you can rightfully blame the failures of the Toronto Maple Leafs in the playoffs on Nylander, Marner, and Matthews. Obviously, those guys are great hockey players, and they haven't produced and they haven't played at the same level in the playoffs as they have in the regular season. But I think more of the blame belongs on the shoulders of Brendan Shanahan, because he hasn't put together a team that can support those guys. Like one playoff win, that's all. I would be pissed if I were a Leafs fan. Yeah, I don't disagree, Philip. But again, I mean, what are you blaming it on? But he doesn't score or make plays to make a goal when it matters. Well, again, I don't. I mean, he doesn't produce at the same level or the same rate that he does in the regular season. I agree, but he doesn't disappear completely. And it's a team game, Philip. It's not about one guy. It's not about one guy. And you need a team to win in the Stanley Cup playoffs. You need a team to take to go all the way, and they don't have that. They don't have that right now. And yes, you can blame that on the big names, but you also have to look at the depth of the team as well. That's why I said, but McDavid and Draisaitl went to the. That's why I said before last year, Philip. That's why I said before last year, because last year they did a pretty good job of setting up their support, their support staff, their third, their third and fourth line guys. They did a better job of that. It's exactly the same. It's precisely the same. You can't spend all your money on two or three guys and then just abandon the depth players on your team. That's why a rebuild is so important, because it gives you the opportunity to create an entire team, right? You have the opportunity to spend money throughout your roster, and you're not spending 12, 13, 14 million dollars on your top guys, right? Right now the Canadiens are, committed to $8 million for Suzuki, $8 million for Caulfield, $7 million, 6.5 some million for Slavkovsky. You want to be able to have good players throughout your lineup. Both of you have a point, but it's true that one guy cannot do it all. Big names don't always mesh well. Well, again, it's it's about having an entire team, right? It's not just about one player. What's up, Jeevan? It's about having depth throughout your lineup, right? You're not going to win the Stanley Cup with one line. You're not going to win the Stanley Cup with, Draisaitl and McDavid can't win you a Stanley Cup on your own. You need to have Corey Perry. You need to have, those guys, Jan Marks, and you got to have those guys at the bottom of your lineup. And the biggest issue that the Oilers are facing this year is that they lost a number of those guys. They lost some of those guys. They lost. I'm drawing a blank. The two guys that went to St. Louis, as RFAs, they lost those guys. I understand that, Philip. What I'm telling you is that the problem has been as much about the depth of their lineup as it is about their top four, their big four. It's not just about those four guys. Sometimes a well-built team is way better than a top six heavy team. 100%. The best teams win when they have a full lineup. It's not just about two or three guys. We have Suzuki Caulfield with much less experience, and they did more than Marner. And well, they haven't done more yet, Philip. But again, the Canadiens are a young team, and they've got a lot of years to grow into what they're capable of. Habs have some of the best contracts in the league. They are primed to become a very deep team. They do, and that's a big part of the rebuild, right? It's not just about building a roster. It's about building a viable roster. It's about building a roster where you have players who are in at a reasonable salary so that you can build a team around them, right? You want to be able to, again, we saw Kent Hughes be able to sign, Caulfield and Suzuki and Slavkovsky, and now we'll see what he can do with Lane Hudson in the offseason, whether he can get him on a long-term contract. We saw what he did with Gooley last offseason. All of these contracts, that's a big part of it, right? It's about building a team. It's not just about, going out and getting a bunch of superstars. All right, PLW, I got to go to sleep too. I'm going to end the show here in a second. Overall, a good season for the Habs. Still a lot of work to do for next season. Roster will still be different. A Cinderella season, and management have a good evaluation of players. What is missing was 100% agree, PLW. The players got experience. I don't think it's so much about them assessing what's missing as much as it is assessing the players themselves, seeing how they comported themselves in the playoffs, how they handled the playoff experience, the playoff pressure, and whether or not they have guys. And I think they got a pretty good sense of who they have and what they're capable of when push comes to shove. So I'm pretty happy with it. I understand what you're saying, but at a certain point, you're 1-13 clinching game. Yeah, it's a problem, but again, the problem is not necessarily solely with the top three, the big three or the big four, Philip. What I'm telling you is the problem is with the management. The problem is with the management that has paid too much money to this big four, and at the expense of the supporting staff, the supporting crew, the people that need to be there to help them to be the best. It's not just because Marner, Matthews, and Nylander are not good playoff performers. It's not about that. It's about the fact that they don't have a good roster. I don't think that's what Ryan O'Reilly said, Philip. Ryan O'Reilly didn't want to play in Toronto, didn't enjoy playing in Toronto, didn't like the pressure and the attention that came with playing in Toronto. He may have said other things about again, we're kind of going over the same thing over and over again. I think we agree to a certain extent. Yes, it is a huge problem that Toronto hasn't won in a long time. It is a huge problem that Toronto is not likely to win. I mean, even if they do get past Ottawa in this series, the likelihood of them being serious Stanley Cup contenders is virtually nil. But again, I don't think that the problem lies solely with, the Big Four. The problem lies in large part with the fact that the Big Four make, close to 50% of the team's salary cap, which then doesn't allow them to provide the supporting staff and the guys to surround them, whether it's on defense or offense, to be able to help them win a Stanley Cup or to go on any type of run in the playoffs. Cheese Wizard, I am not a Habs fan, but this was indeed a big step forward for the young Habitants. I agree. It was a big season for the Canadiens, and I think yeah, it stings a little bit tonight, and it's not a happy night as a Canadiens fan, but in a week or two we can sit back and all look back at this season and say that it was a positive, and be pretty satisfied with it. Anyways, guys, I think I'm going to end the show there. If you have not yet subscribed, please do so. The button is right down here somewhere. There's a button that says subscribe. There's also a button with a thumbs up. That's your like button. If you are enjoying the show, hit the thumbs up button. There's 10 people watching. We've got 12 thumbs up. Surely we can do better than that. It's been a great season, guys. Xavier says, I'm a bit disappointed about tonight's game, but not about the whole year. I remember we were dead last on September 15th. I think we were 28. Yes, it was the Canadiens had a really good second half of the year. I think they made the playoffs despite expectations. It was a great season. So the Canadiens season ends tonight, guys. They lose 4-1 with an empty net goal against the Washington Capitals. They go down 4-1 in the series. They lose out in the first round. Disappointing. It hurts a little bit tonight for them to be out, but I think we're all happy that this was a good season. They continue to develop. They continue to get better. The rebuild is well on track, if not ahead of schedule. Great young players. We saw glimpses tonight of greatness from Cole, Caulfield, Suzuki, Slavkovsky, Demidov, Hudson. I mean, what a power play. What a core group to build on. That is, add guys like Gouli and Jack-I and others to the mix. It's certainly things are looking up. The Laval Rocket with a 3-2 victory in their first playoff game. They go up 1-0 over the Cleveland Monsters in their second round AHL playoff series. Lots of guys in that group who are ready to come up to the NHL level. So again, let's just park it for tonight, guys. Obviously there's some disappointment there about the Canadiens getting eliminated, but it has been a very positive season. There is certainly a lot of runway in front of us for most of our young players. Most of our best players are under the age of 25, and the team certainly has the potential to grow and develop and get better in the years to come, starting with next year. We'll see how Demidov pans out. We'll get another year of Gouli. We'll get another year of Hudson. We'll get another year of the first line. Maybe we'll see Owen Beck make it to the NHL next year. Maybe we'll see Reinbacher. Maybe we'll see Logan Mailloux, amongst others. Maybe Florian Jack-I. Maybe Sean Farrell. Sean Farrell, 2 goals tonight, right? 2 of the 3 goals for the Laval Rocket in their playoff game tonight. Sean Farrell's had an unbelievable second half of the season in the American Hockey League. He's probably been one of the best players in the entire league when it comes to the second half of the season. So, there's a lot to look forward to, guys. There's a lot of positives to take from this season. There's a lot of positives to take going into next season. So let's maybe mourn for a day or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 about the end of the season. It was obviously not fun to watch them lose to the Washington Capitals, but the season was a success. We're in a great spot when it comes to management. We're in a great spot when it comes to the coaching staff, and we're in a great spot when it comes to the players presently at the NHL level and the ones who are on their way up. So, merci beaucoup tout le monde. On n'a pas parlé tellement en français ce soir, mais c'est une émission bilingue. So, that's it for tonight, guys. That's it for the season. We will continue to do hopefully a weekly show. We'll do Habs Therapy Day as the season or as the off season progresses, we'll talk about the prospects. We'll talk about the draft. We'll talk about what to expect from next year, and maybe we'll do a bit of a recap on this year as well, starting next week. And so that's it. Thank you very much. I appreciate all of your contributions, all of your time being here. We are trying to build a place where you guys can come and talk about your favorite team and about hockey in general. We try to provide you a space where you can talk intelligently, civilly about the game. We don't always agree, but that's fine too. We can live with that. But we're not just rah go Habs go kind of people. We're going to have good, deep, intelligent conversations about our team. So hit that thumbs up button. If you're not subscribed, if you're watching in a replay, guys, subscribe, notification bell, thumbs up, all that good stuff. Let's get her done. We will see you probably next Wednesday for our first summer episode or our off-season episode of Habs Therapy Day. And unfortunately, there won't be any more Habs After Dark episodes after tonight. I'm probably going to be I'm writing a book about my uncle who was a pro hockey player back in the 50s and 60s. So I'm going to spend a lot of my time over the summer and over the off season doing that. But we will do a show on Wednesday evenings focused on the Montreal Canadiens. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Bonne saison, bonne nuit. Merci beaucoup pour vos contributions, pour vos questions, pour vos commentaires. Thank you very much, guys, for a great season and for a fun time. I thank you for everything. I appreciate it all. And, stick by. Like I said, subscribe, hit the notification bell. You'll get notified when we decide to go live. Maybe it'll be only on Wednesdays. Maybe we'll do some other stuff here and there as well. But I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your evening. I hope you enjoy your off season, and I look forward to seeing you throughout the off season. So that's it for tonight. Thanks for everything, and peace out.
Hoffman, Monahan parked in front, docks to Caulfield, fires, scores!
You are about to enter Habs After Dark with Recliner Sports.